Hey guys, welcome to Motor Racing Podcast. It's me, your host, Kevin, with my co-host here, Don. And we're awesome to say we got our very own Chris Golden back this week. Chris, how you been, buddy?
Oh, not too bad. Just I have not turned a single lap this year other than a little front-wheel drive four-cylinder car, which is a lot of fun, but I don't consider it a race car. I'm sorry for anybody who does. It's fun, but it's not what I'm used to. I'm rebuilding a modified engine right now. It didn't make it past opening night practice.
Oh, you blew an engine before practice? Oh my gosh!
Well, during practice, it was
practice.
The night before opening night. It dropped a valve and blew a hole through the side of the cylinder. So it's nice.
Oh boy,
hey, that's a part of the game, man. That's how it goes.
Oh yeah.
It seemed like a lot of the guys. What was it, last Saturday night? I was down there at the local dirt track. They were running those front wheel drive four cylinders. A lot of guys on their laps just catching fire, blowing motors. Are those cars bad for that?
On that, not really. I don't like driving them. They're little death traps. I mean, I'm used to my modified. I don't like the little front wheel drive four cylinders because they're not built. I mean, yes, they have cages and everything else, but they're not built to have that give that like our modifieds and the purpose built race cars. When you hit the wall with them, yeah, it hurts. The wall doesn't move, but they're built to have a lot more give. I mean, I've hit the wall in my modified, and I hit a tractor tire in the little front wheel drive four cylinder, and it felt the same as hitting the wall in my modified. They have no give, and your body takes the whole brunt of it. And you're going so much slower, but it hurts so much worse.
Yeah, regardless of speed, man, the impact that your body takes when you make contact like that, it's no joke, and people don't really understand, unless you've experienced it, that it's not, borderline up there with football players and how they take hits every Sunday during their games. Man, they feel it for 3, 4, 5, maybe even a week later. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, my modified, like I'll hit the wall in the modified, and it hurts, but there's no soreness really, unless it's like a really bad hit. But with that little front wheel drive four cylinder, I just hit a tractor tire, and I'm still sore, and that was 3 weeks ago.
Yep. You hit just wrong.
Yep.
Man, so what a weekend of racing we had, right? I mean, the excitement leading in from the practice into the qualifying for the Indy 500. I know, Don, you mentioned it. Everybody's been following Kyle Larson like an Amazon package, man. Yeah. Makes it within 20 minutes, flies from Indy after qualifying 5th for the Indy 500 to make it for the All-Star race within 20 minutes of him having to fire engines.
Right. He even did all of his interview stuff with Fox and Clint and Kevin and all them boys too. So he had plenty of time to spare, with the 20 minutes that he had when he got there. So it was cool. It was cool to see the transition of him going back and forth. Really, really excited to see how he performs this weekend.
And I mean, with the All-Star race, it seemed like he didn't have to skip a beat. Like there was no difference. It didn't phase him jumping from an Indy car straight back into the stock car because he had a top 5 run in the All-Star race coming from the back.
I mean, if anybody's surprised in 2024 that Kyle Larson can switch vehicle, I mean, I'm convinced he flew the private jet and the helicopter to the track. Like, let's just call it what it is. This guy is incredible. I'm not directly a Kyle Larson fan, but man, I appreciate what this guy's capable of, man. It's really, really a marvel.
So, I mean, Chris, you're the man behind the wheel. Essentially with the repave, like we saw this weekend, what kind of obstacles and what kind of challenges does that possess as a driver?
Well, obviously, anytime you have a racing service, I mean, Kyle Larson actually mentioned it his first year with Hendrick, talking about California, and how different it was after practice with just a different car, because he always ran really well with Ganassi at California. I mean, that's where he got his first win, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
And he said he was always able. There was a bump going into turn 1 and in turn 3 that he could use as his lifting point. But then he mentioned that when he jumped over to Hendrick, he couldn't feel the bump anymore. The car was too smooth. He lost his entry point. So that tells me that there was a huge gap there in ability of the equipment. So with that, I mean, but going back to the repave, drivers get used to little bumps like that in the track. I mean, Charlotte in 3 and 4 through the tunnel turn will jar your teeth out, but guys have gotten used to it and have become accustomed to that. So it really, I mean, it's almost muscle memory. You do it so many times, it becomes muscle memory. Then when something's different, it's like, whoa, what was that? What's going on here? And you have to basically reprogram your whole brain.
And you kind of play it into your normal drive home or your normal drive to work. You know exactly on the highway and all your close by streets where little bumps and potholes and stuff are. It's no different than these guys getting used to the racetracks that they're racing at. So that had to have been a mind flip in its own when he went from Ganassi to Hendrick, and all of a sudden his car wasn't reacting to those bumps like it used to. So that probably had to be a crazy feeling for him.
So the tire situation, I know we were trying to see about fall off. I know we saw a lot of fall off, but we also saw that the tires didn't take to the race like they did in practice. We saw the primaries be able to kind of hold their own in the All-Star Open. And then as soon as night fell, the primaries, if you had primaries on, you were going to the back. That softer compound, is it the heat that it produces that allowed that tire to last longer on a cooler track?
Honestly, I don't really know as far as how the track was repaved, and I don't understand. I know they're still chasing tires a lot. Even now with the new car, they're still going back and forth a ton on tires, trying to find what works and what doesn't. So I really can't say. I mean, that we would pretty much have to get in and dive deep into what Goodyear's doing and what tire they brought and what tires they brought last year and everything else to really see what the difference was.
I mean, go ahead, Don.
Sorry about that. What's interesting about the fall off is you're going to get different results given different scenarios, right? So you got your practice where you're running the car completely different than when you're actually on course with 20 other guys and you're battling for position. That's going to affect the way the tire reacts and responds as far as wear over your 50 lap run, your 60 lap runs. And in their case, they were able to bail immediately. We'll get to Kyle and Ricky here later, but they were able to bail on, I think it was lap 5 of the caution, and then they came back at lap 10. So as far as figuring out what Goodyear is doing, man, I mean, it's a question mark every single week now, it seems like. Is Goodyear getting to a point where they make tires too good, where there's almost no fall off on some of these tires? It seems like we've had situations where everybody's worried about tires, and then all of a sudden nobody's worried about them halfway through the race. It's just running the normal muscle memory, if you will. It's just normal day at the office, I guess. And then sometimes we have an atrocious compound like whatever the hell happened at Bristol a few weeks ago or a couple months ago. And everybody's like, why are the tires not lasting? So it seems like it's a constant question mark. It's almost like NASCAR and Goodyear are doing it on purpose just to generate the conversation about it.
You bring up a really good point. What you originally said with how the tires are going to react different in traffic versus, say, a tire test. Because we're getting a whole lot of feedback from NASCAR and from Goodyear. It's like, oh, we took this tire to Phoenix and we tested, and so went out and did a tire test. We got these results back. I'm like, that's well and good. That's all well and good. In those tire tests, you don't have 36 cars driving in traffic. You have
different.
Exactly. You have 4 or 5 cars out there running practice times. Good and well they're not pushing the car how they're supposed to push it. Right. Nobody will, because you don't do that on your equipment, whether it's a tire test or not.
Right.
So you know that no one is actually running race trim during those tire tests. So me personally, I feel like tire tests are one of the stupidest things ever created because it doesn't do anything. And I think Goodyear is starting to realize that, and they're just kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it every week and bringing out, say, okay, let's try this one. Let's try this one. Let's try this one. And pretty much the tire tests have proven nothing. So I think now they're, like I said, like you said, they're just kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it. And seeing what they can bring where. And obviously the tire they brought to Bristol was it laid down a lot of rubber, created really good racing, but it didn't last.
Right.
So I think they're trying to find that balance.
So, I mean, with the tire test saying it didn't produce anything, that comes to the question. I saw somebody that pointed out on X, the last couple of times that we've had a tire test at a new place, like the Clash, Joey Logano was one of the ones that did the tire test at the Clash, and who won the debut at the Clash? Joey Logano. Who did the tire test for the Cup Series back a couple months ago, ran over 800 laps in the car? Joey Logano. And who won the All-Star race? The first race on a new repave? Joey Logano.
There was a race winner. I didn't even. There was something else going on the entire time. I don't even realize there was a winner of that race.
I know.
It was a. I hate to say it, it's a little bit of a dirt track term. It was a 1-lane racetrack, and I mean nobody ever passed him. If you same thing in the Open, Ty Gibbs led every lap. Next race, Joey Logano led every lap. So now that brings the question: how do we get more passing that the fans want on these short tracks?
Well, see, NASCAR said they were trying to steer away from the resin. So not the resin, the PJ1. But here, like at Bristol, the PJ1, especially with these next gen cars, were producing pretty decent races. And then the first time they dwindle away from it and use the resin, we had the big tire problem at Bristol and all the wrecks and just the slipping and sliding. So maybe we go back to the PJ1 on the bottom, or maybe even like they do at New Hampshire, bottom lane, skip a lane, and PJ1 another lane. That would probably be the best thing over at that's next year. Over at North Wilkesboro, because you still have where you can see where they climb the banking. You can still see that hard seam that's there.
Yep.
So PJ1 may not be so good on that top lane, but when night falls, if they continue to make these night races, that top lane is going to be the dominant lane anyways, regardless. And I don't think that the PJ1 is going to help after the sun goes down.
I think Denny Hamlin on his podcast last year, his little podcast that he does with Dirty Mo Media, he mentioned, and he's mentioned it several times since then, as have others, putting more horsepower back in the cars. And I understand what they're trying to do, but they're pretty much, for lack of a better term, they're taking talent out of the equation with these cars. Because of the low horsepower, because it's a big thing in dirt racing and on lower level asphalt racing is throttle control. If you don't have throttle control, then somebody with a smaller motor is going to smoke you.
Right. So
that's the thing, is if they do put more power in these cars, they're probably going to see more tire fall off, and there's going to be more strategy, more. I mean, we won't say more passing, but there'll be a lot more strategy involved, a lot more tire fall off. And we'll see a wider gap. We'll see those gaps start to form between driver ability and equipment, which is what I feel like we've been lacking with the new car, is they've kind of squandered driver abilities. They made everyone equal, whether their talent level is there or not.
So it just depends on who's got that horsepower, that 0.2 ahead of the next car, because that's pretty much what it comes down to week to week, who brings the fastest car to the racetrack.
Right. And it was like, yeah, it's just that there's such a small gap now. And I mean, obviously it got out of hand with the R&D departments and the having to outmoney the bigger teams. I understand that. So it really opened up a lot for the smaller teams. So I do understand that side of it. But now that they're all on a level playing field, we need to put the wins and the finishes back in the driver's hands, instead of everyone has one thing, keep them with one thing, but make that one thing harder to drive. Make it to where it's not a danger level, but make it to where if a guy gets on the throttle too hard, he's going to burn off his tires faster. I mean, there's been several nights where at the dirt track here with my modified, I'm running a little 604 crate, and I'm smoking guys with 75 more horsepower than me just because I don't have to worry about throttle control. They're blowing the tires off the car, and I'm just pulling them out of the corner because I'm being able to put that traction to the ground. And I've had the same thing done to me early on, is that throttle control. Even though I had more horsepower than someone, I got my rear end smoked because they knew how to get it to the ground. And it's the same thing with these drivers now, is they don't have enough horsepower, it seems like, almost, I mean, in theory, to spin the tires and really wear them out. I mean, they kind of take it out of their hands.
It makes you wonder, and maybe we haven't gone far back enough yet, but it makes you wonder why NASCAR made the decisions that they made, because you bring up a lot of good points with driver ability and driver talent. Why would NASCAR take that out of their hands? Why would, we know what we see as a fan and as a viewer, but we're not asking the correct question as why NASCAR made these decisions originally. Like they dropped the horsepower for some reason, whether, I mean, safety, but the cars are safe, the fences are safe, the walls are safe. So like y'all are saying, can we bring the horsepower back? And if it doesn't work, if we're not seeing any change, then okay, then it was never the horsepower, the whole time. But at least try, throw 800 on them and see what happens,
Well, and Kyle Larson also said in an interview that they could easily go to the shop and ramp these guys up to 1,000 horsepower,
right,
and take it to the racetrack safely. And that's coming out of Kyle Larson's mouth.
Right.
So if Larson, who is one of these guys that pretty much doesn't want to drive anything unless he knows it can kill him, if he's telling you we can do it safely, then 9 times out of 10, listen to the guy that has the experience, who's been behind the wheel.
And we also have to take some of the safety aspect. I don't want to come off like I don't care about the safety of drivers, because I do, but they know what they're signing up for when they climb inside that window and strap that belt on. Like, they signed up for this the same way your football players sign up to get hit on the noggin every week, the same way gymnasts go out and risk their knees and their hips and their everything all the way across the board. These guys know what they sign up for. So let's put it back in their hands. Let's really, really see who's the best of the best with this thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm right there with you. Because as a driver, honestly, just like both of you just stated, adding more horsepower is really not going to make the cars go any faster or any slower. Right. More horsepower is not going to change anything at our 2 most dangerous tracks, which are Daytona and Talladega. Right. Horsepower will not affect anything. They're not going to go any faster. They're not going to go any slower. They'll get out of the corner faster. And I mean, everything about racing is more torque than it is top end horsepower at the end of the straightaway. It's all about getting through the corner and out of the corner.
And like you said, with the throttle control, if these guys can't handle the extra horsepower, then they're not as good as their peers and their competitors.
Exactly. And not to be super negative, Nancy, I'm a big Kyle Larson fan. But that being said, kind of change the direction a little here, talking about the Kyle Larson, going back to the IndyCar, Kyle Larson can drive anything stuff. Nobody knew who Kyle Larson was at Ganassi. Nobody knew who he was until he paired up with Hendrick and won a championship as soon as he came back, went and ran the late models and all of that. But I've said this a million times on my own stuff, and I'm a low budget guy, so I'm trying to not be super negative, Nancy, and just everything else. But if you give him the same budget that a lot of the guys he's racing against have, he wouldn't have won all those late model races. He wouldn't have won all of those other races. Like if he never went to Hendrick, nobody would know who Kyle Larson is. He's a great dude, and he is very, very talented, and is finally able to show through what his talent is. But I don't agree with the fact that he can go out and win in anything until he shows me that he can take a low-budget car and go win in it.
Right. Even with Chip Ganassi, they might not be on the level with your Gibbs and your Hendricks and stuff like that, but he was putting that car in position to win a lot.
Yeah.
And so that absolutely was really cool to see.
he was definitely overperforming in his equipment, and that was really cool to see. It's almost like he's gotten complacent now because he has the Hendrick equipment, and he like goes out, okay, cool, I'm back, let's win this championship, and then he just sucks butt for 2 years, and now he's finally starting to come back.
And sucks butt and still rattling off wins.
Right? Yeah, it's crazy.
So do we feel like there was an advantage there for Joey Logano and for these drivers that do the tire tests and go to these new repaved tracks?
I mean, seat time is always going to translate to advantage. If you're getting extra laps compared to your competitors, that's going to be an automatic advantage. Whether you feel like you took anything positive or negative from it, you were still in the seat at the track when others weren't. So, yeah.
So how do we fix that? Do we go back to, are we just going to have Xfinity drivers come up and test our Cup cars? Or do we allow NASCAR to say, hey, okay, so let's do a testing date, give all the teams a certain amount of testing dates to the season. Let's schedule it here's the open dates. You can schedule testing dates. So there will be NASCAR officials there. So nobody can be accused of cheating, and bring back testing all the way around.
I say you use retired drivers.
Yeah,
you use your fresh into retirement drivers, your Kevin Harvicks, your Matt Kenseth. Use all those boys and stuff.
Or
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I agree with you. But in the 80s, NASCAR had a specifically hired guy that would go out and do tests. Hut Strickland, one of my favorite drivers from the early 90s. He started out as a tire tester. That was all he did. He was paid by NASCAR to go out and test tires, and then he ended up getting a Cup ride later on from it. But yeah, take a bunch of late model guys, take a bunch of nobodies that are never going to benefit from driving these cars. They're not going to be affiliated with any teams ever, because you have, with the Xfinity, with the trucks, with everything, you have those cross affiliations to where they could take stuff to those teams. Find somebody that's not associated with any team, anywhere, anyone, and give them. I mean, those guys would be happy as hell most of the time to just drive a car, but give them give them a few $100 or pay for their travel, whatever, food, right. Put them in a hotel, and go send them out there to test. Where it's an unbiased individual who has driving talent that is not going to share info with anyone other than Goodyear and NASCAR, and it's not going to go back to the teams.
See, and I feel like that would be fair.
Because the biggest worry with like Harvick, Kenseth, any retired drivers, the worry is that they still have that allegiance to their the previous teams and stuff like that. So that's why I'm thinking maybe find someone who has no allegiance or has never had any allegiance.
No, that's a great point, because they still show up at the shop, every now and then. They all live pretty much on the East Coast anyway, and so yeah, they're still gonna have the ties. So yeah, that's a great point with retired drivers, and still giving them little tidbits of secrets along the way. So yeah, the late model guys. I mean, no matter what, there's plenty of people they can choose from to do a fair test without getting an advantage to someone like Joey Logano or who else was with them there at that test?
Ty Gibbs.
Ty Gibbs,
of course. So yeah,
who led every lap of the Open, and yeah,
right. There's 7.5 billion people to choose from.
Right. Yeah. If anybody important's watching, by the way, I am available for hire for tire tests. I hate my job, and I would like to have a job that I enjoy. So all y'all listening out there, I'm your guy, and these two are your guy. We have no allegiance anywhere. We're unbiased.
There you
go. So we'll get to the elephant in the room of the All-Star race.
It was hilarious.
The Kyle Busch, Ricky Stenhouse.
Just imagine getting punched by a guy wearing shorts like that.
Oh, those shorts were the best. The dude was so ready for the lake.
I saw. Well, somebody said that Ricky must have kept some of Danica's clothing.
That sounds about right. Oh my gosh, and you know what's crazy is I watched some of Denny Hamlin's Actions Detrimental yesterday, and he of course everybody's talking about it. That's what everybody's talking about. and he was saying how Kyle was actually about to start the sentence to defuse the whole thing, and Ricky, he finally just snapped and threw that right hand. Um, I think Kyle could have gotten information from his team, from somebody saying Ricky didn't do anything. You kind of lined yourself up into a bad situation. Ricky took the available space, and then that way, because Kyle had 198 laps to come down and have information given to him from somebody walk up to him and say, hey, I don't think this happened exactly how you might have felt it happened. I think that could have saved that would have saved Kyle even approaching Ricky at the hauler, to be honest. Ricky still had some stuff he needed to get worked out, obviously, but I don't think Kyle went in with the correct information, and that really is what escalated to a fist being thrown.
I think so, especially with Ricky waiting at the 8 hauler. Something could have been done there, but as a driver, a lot of times on the radio, we are protected by our spotter and crew chief so that we don't get in our own heads. It's one of those, even if it was our fault, in the heat of the moment, they're going to say, hey, no biggie, he did this, you did that, whatever. But he knew he did something wrong, obviously. But on the radio, they're going to defend you while you're in the car. Okay. And afterwards, I'm assuming it probably fell by the wayside as they went into the race, worrying about spotting and crew adjustments, how the car was going. And I'm sure it was forgotten until right at the end of the race, after he had parked and already gotten out of the car where no one could communicate to him. Right. Because we're sheltered a lot on the radio by our crew members. So I'm assuming it was put out of his head as well as everyone else's. And all the crew obviously is not at the hauler. They're over on pit road. And the crew, if you notice, the crew is walking up with Kyle to the hauler. They're done. And then they just see Ricky standing there. And it's like, oh, crap. Kind of like we forgot about him.
Right.
Uh-oh. And then, honestly, I don't think anybody had any clue that Ricky was actually going to swing, because Ricky had just said, like, I don't remember what it was per se, but I listened to their conversation. And he had just said like a really calm sentence that gave me no indication that he was going to swing. It's like nothing. And then all of a sudden swung like mid-sentence. And I was like, that is the weirdest way to swing on somebody. Like, I was cracking up, dude. It was the greatest all-star race in a very long time.
So Ricky actually got trapped on the infield. Do we think Ricky would have just bailed on the night and on?
Oh, he said he was going to. I just watched a piece he did with somebody that said if there would have been a way out by the time the race was over, he'd have been at home watching the end of it.
Okay, so so the fact that he was trapped, I mean, this whole thing could have been avoided altogether.
Well, that probably pissed him off more too, just being stuck there wanting to go home.
Right, you just crashed your $500,000 race car on top of not being able to have a chance to win $1 million, and you got to watch the guy that took you out continue to race. So yeah, it was just it all boiled up to being nothing good. Well, it actually ended up great for everyone.
Yeah.
So with the Joey Logano leading almost every lap, if not every lap,
Denny led one lap is what happened, I think.
Okay. So Joey being out front, nobody being able to pass Joey. What do we do about the aero blocking? Do we do what some of the drivers have requested and take the rear camera out to make it harder to aero block?
I don't know that you're getting that much aero block on a 120-mile-an-hour track. I mean, I think the Cup guys maybe got up to 129, but they're not going fast enough for long enough for that aero block to actually be a factor at these shorter tracks. As far as the larger tracks, I mean, we saw Dale Earnhardt manipulate air like nobody else to his advantage a lot of the time. I mean, what are we talking about? Like, figure it out, guys. Like, y'all are professionals. Figure it out.
It's a part of the sport.
Right. Like, we got to stop appeasing to everybody's little complaints. And I think it's like half the field that complains that I can't get by because I'm being aero blocked. Okay, well, how about you get up front and aero block so that people can't pass you? How about that? you know? So that's kind of my view on it.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I do say take the rear cameras out. That's just my personal opinion, because coming from a dirt background, we don't have spotters, we don't have mirrors, we have nothing. Yeah, we have no clue. We depend on our competitors to not put us in a bad spot trying to pass us.
Right.
I feel like the Cup guys, I mean, for me personally, I never used my rear view or my driver's side mirror anyway. I would just rely on the spotter, because coming from the dirt background, I wasn't used to it. It was very distracting for me. It was something else I had to worry about, and I could barely see over the spoiler in the mirror anyway. Right. The side view mirror, it's one of those wide angle little fisheye mirrors, and I hated it anyway. So I just told the spotter, I was like, look, I'm not going to make any dumb moves. I'm just going to cruise around here. Just tell me where everybody's at so I don't do anything stupid. So me personally, I think they should remove all the mirrors and just have a spotter. That's already an advantage compared to what we have on dirt anyway. So if they want to show they're the best in the world, then they need to show they're better than a lot of these poor dirt track racers that will never get a chance because they don't have the cash.
Right. And I didn't even answer your question, Kevin. As far as the rear camera mirror, I think it was an interesting thing to implement. Do I think it's helped the sport? Do I think it's hurt the sport? No, both ways. So it wouldn't affect me if they got rid of it, and it wouldn't affect me if they kept it.
See, I feel like the only place that we really should have those is at the super speedways. And the only reason I say that is because I feel like since they've gone to those cameras, we have saved a lot of wrecked race cars or potential wrecked race cars.
Yeah, they're able to pick up the runs a lot better, whether they're coming on the outside, inside, or middle. And it seems like guys are able to
make a faster decision on that.
Correct.
I feel like that's where the rear camera has been most beneficial. But as far as that goes, the short tracks, road courses, mile and a half, if it's not a super speedway, get rid of it.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I mean, at least on the super speedways, they can see where Brad Keselowski is behind them and know if they need to change lanes or not.
Right. Because we know Brad and Joey and them boys, they don't mess around when it comes to blocking.
Brad like the corner push, man. That
dude, I love
Joey over Brad any day.
Yeah, I love Brad. Love his tenacity, we'll say. But the dude doesn't know how to push.
And that's why we see Penske cars consistently and constantly wrecked at the end of these races. That's just what it is, you know?
Yeah.
So
now RFK.
If it's not the aero blocking of the short tracks, is it the short track package altogether that needs to be changed? Because it seems like our short track races have been the least exciting races of the season. I feel like this all-star race was okay, and the only reason it was exciting was because of the whole Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse thing. But as far as the racing goes, something's got to give, because Bristol, we had the big tire issue, and which I'm not against having the tire strategy. You know what I'm saying? Right. But when it's the same people over and over and over, and like I said, the correlation between Joey Logano and the tire test, something's got to give. We got to be able to give the rest of the field a chance to get past the leader.
I think what happened was in 2022, when they introduced this car, they introduced a car that they tried to hit right in the middle of all these racetracks, like tried to hit as in the middle of a universal race car. Whereas it seemed like the decades before, teams had, hey, we got our Darlington car. Hey, we got our Bristol car. Hey, we got our road course car. And that's why the cars were able to perform better at their specific locations. Whereas now, the same McDonald's car that Bubba's taken to Dover 2 weeks ago, it's probably going to Charlotte next week. You know, like they probably put new stickers or a new wrap on it and replaced a few of the parts that need to be replaced. And that's the same car that's going. And so it's just, I think that's got a big deal to do with it. And I'm not a driver yet. I would like to be a driver one day. But I would like to think that has something to do with it when you're taking the same exact car, and that's why you're getting the exact same results year after year.
So what we can't leave out the truck series. Um, we tried to get this race in for 3 days. It was scheduled for Friday night, got rained out Saturday. And then we got the race in on a nice hot Sunday.
No,
Um,
I'm on the phone.
no qualifying. So that was a big gamble in itself for the truck race, I believe. No qualifying. We're going to set it. Can't remember the formula they used, or it wasn't by points. I think it was the last finishing order, correct?
I think they go off owner points when a race is weather affected. I think they go to owners points for qualifying.
It's like that's
position.
what they did for the Coliseum.
Right.
They went off of owner points.
Okay. Maybe they did that because it was the beginning of the season. They had nothing else to go off of.
Maybe so. I'll be honest. I didn't get to see any of the truck race at all. I think my buddy Caden Honeycutt was running. Didn't even get to watch him in anything this weekend. So I am lost on anything other than the All-Star race.
So as far as the trucks, I mean, we had made our predictions Friday. They both chose Corey Heim because how do you bet against Corey Heim right now? The dude's racing out of his freaking mind in some of the best Toyota trucks I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I ended up dark coursing and going for Christian Eckes. So then when starting on the pole, I was like, oh shit, he might actually have a chance at this thing. And then he fell off, but the truck race was great. They were able to move around a lot. They were able to use the instability of the trucks very well on this short track. It was really entertaining.
For sure. Yeah, and I got a shout out to Daniel Dye, 9th place finish in that 43 truck. I know every week he's been getting stronger and stronger, and they just showed what kind of strength they have on the short tracks. And they've got, I think they're going to be at Iowa with Cup, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have the list of short tracks that they'll have through the playoffs. So if Daniel Dye so happens to make the playoffs, these runs like this will be very helpful to them in the future. Shout out to Brendan Queen on his Truck Series debut, man, with Tricon Garage.
Call that man
4th place
Butterbean.
finish.
That was awesome.
Oh, they had the camera on him almost the whole last half of that race.
He had the crowd in the palm of his hand. Like Corey Heim won the race, and Queen he had the crowd. It was so cool. And then I was so bummed to see NASCAR make him take his nickname off the back window, especially when it's not a full-time ride. And then I saw comments, people flying in from fucking wherever, talking about how he hasn't earned the right to have a nickname on the car. It was like, what? How do you earn the right to have let people have nicknames? Like, that's silly. So NASCAR actually made him change that on Friday. It said Butterbean, and then Saturday morning it was changed to Queen.
So
it seemed like a silly rule.
NASCAR just needs to leave that kind of stuff alone. If it's a full-time ride, I can kind of see whatever. But it's just something for somebody else to, bitch about.
Now I want to see Melon Man on Ross's car. I want to see, I don't know what Denny's would be, beat off your favorite driver or whatever he said. Have that
hack.
Across his banner. He's a hack. Like, it would be so much fun to let these guys show their personalities, man. What are we doing? They're not robots, right? We've all met them. We've shaken their hands and had little mini conversations with these guys. They're people with personalities, and I feel like NASCAR did a really good job of getting everybody into this little shell of don't piss off your sponsors and don't say the wrong thing on the camera because we'll get canceled, right?
Like, you just gave me a crazy idea that I think I'm going to do on my car. So for sponsor stuff from here on out, I think I'm going to play to people's natural curiosity. And instead of having sponsors on my car, I'm going to have QR codes that link to the sponsors' websites.
My goodness.
So the entire car is just going to be different QR codes and like, I wonder what that is. And they'll scan the QR code. Boom. They get clicks to their website.
How about that, my friend? Where's my damn pen? That's good stuff, man. And that would work in a lot of facets. Like the amount of exposure these cars are getting, especially with your smaller tracks, the fans are able to come right up to you. They're able to go in the pits. everybody's got a damn cell phone in their hand, and they're always looking for the next little entertainment bit they can find.
Yeah,
And
because
that
I actually had a sponsor last year. They put their QR code. They had their company logo and a small QR code. Well, at the end of the year, I always donate my doors and quarter panels. I keep one door and I donate everything else.
Right.
So we were at an event in Dallas, Texas, in the parking lot of a restaurant, and I donated the quarter panel and the door that their logo was on the quarter panel with a QR code. So I donated it to the restaurant, and the restaurant hung it up in the restaurant. So now the sponsor's QR code is right there inside that restaurant, and they said they've been getting hits like crazy. So I think I'm just going to do like, if you imagine like all the NASCAR guys someday in the future having huge just QR codes on their hood, and then on the quarters and then doors, and the whole car is just different QR codes, just feeding off people's natural curiosity.
Right. That is so intriguing, man. We need to lock this up somehow, copyright it so NASCAR can't steal that from us, man.
I just thought of that. We're creating stuff here today.
Love it.
So with the All-Star race returning in 2025 to North Wilkesboro, what kind of changes do we want to see between, now and then? Obviously, we had the repave, we had the primary and the choice in the reds. What else needs to change? I mean, obviously the aero package and all that, but maybe even from a fan standpoint.
Well, from a fan standpoint, it seemed like everybody was really happy with everything. Best we can see, I think it's amazing for the fans. Maybe some traffic issues from what I've heard, if they haven't went through and repaved the other roads that they were going to do last year. I know they talked about a few times. From a driver perspective and from someone who's knowledgeable about the cars, and this doesn't just go from North Wilkesboro, it goes for every short track. More horsepower on the short tracks. They don't have to give them more horsepower anywhere else, but more horsepower on the short tracks will create
back in the drivers.
Yes,
I think
that's the issue. And honestly, like we said, the horsepower is not going to help in Atlanta or really even Charlotte, the cookie cutter tracks, super speedways, anything. Road courses and short tracks give us more horsepower so we can see that tire fall off with the less talented drivers.
And does that fix ultimately? Ultimately, we're going to run the All-Star race at night. It's just a tradition that it's an it's a night race. So obviously, if the softer compound is going to be dominant over the primary, if that's going to be a continuous thing, is that how they fix the tire issues? Just more horsepower?
Honestly, I think the more horsepower will fix the tire issue in general across all of the short tracks. I still believe that is the issue. Again, taking it back to the dirt track side, a 604 crate engine, I've ran both, an open engine as well as a 604 crate. I could never burn off tires with a 604 crate because we were putting more traction to the ground. So I could never burn off tires. But when I finally did move up to the larger engine with the stroker engines and everything else, the 360 and so on, I was burning off rear tires left and right because I didn't understand the throttle control, didn't understand that horsepower gap. So I would go through 3 tires in a night at a local dirt track when I could run the same 2 tires for the entire season with a 604 crate, which is 75 less horsepower. So I think even if we give them, doesn't have to be 1,100 or 1,000 or whatever, just give them 800 and see how the cars react. Just give them a little bit. And if you do start to see that difference in the tire fall off, then up it a little more and up it a little more. Find that threshold to where it works. But I personally feel like more horsepower at the short tracks and road courses only, it's not required at all of them, just those will greatly increase our quality of short track racing.
And you'll definitely separate those who aren't able to manage a higher horsepower car compared to a lot of the guys like we saw Martin and Denny Hamlin really do well at Bristol. Those savvy veterans, man, they knew how to take care of the tire. They knew how to make it last long enough until they need to make that final push. And it was really cool to see those guys. It was really cool to see everybody else struggle. And it was really cool to see a couple of drivers really handle that situation really well.
Oh, absolutely. Look at how amazing the races are on short tracks in the Xfinity Series.
Mm-hmm.
So biggest question, why do the Xfinity Series cars have more horsepower than the Cup cars? What kind of sense does that make?
That's a great question.
Is it got anything to do between the power to torque? Because the Xfinity cars have a transmission and
Right.
the Cup cars have a transaxle.
Right.
So where does that have anything to do with it? Can that transaxle only handle so much?
Possibly, because if we remember, when they first debuted this car at the Coliseum, they were breaking a lot of the transaxles. So it makes me wonder if the short track packages, but I mean, that was under the same amount of horsepower they have now, the small amount of horsepower, and they were braking. So it makes me wonder if it really is a torque horsepower issue, or it was just faulty parts issue, or not the correct, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not the correct build, I guess, of the cars. I mean, they had a ton of issues with they've changed a lot of things since that first year when, I mean, Kurt Busch had his concussion. Lots of guys were complaining about the rear of the car. Things have changed. So if the transaxle can't take that much power, go back to something else. I mean, Kyle Busch, when he ran the track in Austin, COTA, he ran COTA in the Xfinity race, or it might have been the truck a few years ago. He had blisters on his hands from the H pattern shifter because the Cup guys weren't used to it. And I'm sorry, this is just my opinion. The Cup Series, which is the upper echelon of North American motorsports, should not be the easiest series to drive of the three we'll say four. We'll include ARCA in this. That car should not be the easiest of the four series to drive. It should be the hardest.
Yeah, we really have seen drivers come from trucks and Xfinity, and whether they're subbing for a ride or they're actually got their full-time ride, transition very well. Now they might not be in as good of equipment as other teams, but they are able to drive these cars really, really well, and it's almost like a seamless change. Corey Heim, he's ran the 43 car a couple times. You wouldn't even know he wasn't a Cup driver. He was out there consistently running good times with everyone else.
Oh yeah.
So as far as the Cup car being easier to drive, one, I don't know why they made it like that, and two, how do they fix it? Right? Like, because you're going back. Are you going to go back? It raises so many questions.
Honestly, with this car, I feel like we could go backwards to go forwards.
Okay.
I feel like with this new car, the idea was to strengthen the body. So when they were rubbing or you barely caught the wall, that you weren't pushing a fender in and blowing a tire and just doing that. But in turn, they traded a solid underbody to this new car for a solid overbody and a soft underbody. We're still seeing broken toe links, bent toe links. We're still seeing all these issues. If this is what's going on, we need to go back to the Gen 6 car design. And we need to have that chassis and just use the composite body and put it on top of a Gen 6 car. Take the aero packages that they're having and bada bing, bada boom, that's fixed.
Yeah, because
these cars will do what NASCAR has been trying to get these cars to do.
And you get your 5 lugs back like you've been wanting.
I mean, it's one of those deals. I agree 100%. I think that it's an issue. I mean, because they wanted to keep you hit the wall and keep a tire from going down. That's understandable.
Right.
But all they've done is trade cut tires for broken toe links.
Which takes somebody out of the race anyways.
Yeah, there's no less cautions. These cars are not more durable. I mean, if you barely tap the wall the wrong way, you got a broken rear toe link and you're wiping out everybody. If you hit the wall and blow a tire, at least you can hold the car against the wall. But if you have a broken rear toe link, guess what? You can't control the car. It's going to turn whichever way it wants to turn and wipe out a bunch of other cars.
That crab walk that we saw in 2022 when everybody was like, look what the car is doing. And the cameras would be on it and the car was like crab walking all the way back to the pit.
Exactly. Imagine that, how hard that is to control. Because with that crab walk, essentially what's creating the crab walk is you have a broken toe link. So the wheels can shift as they want.
Right.
So as soon as it breaks and shifts this way, the driver is going to turn to try to correct the car and it's going to shift back this way.
Right.
So you have these wheels steering the rear of you. It's almost like a rear
Like a
steer.
forklift.
Yeah, exactly. You get that essential forklift. We saw it at Daytona earlier this year, or it might have been last year actually. Someone hit the wall coming out of 2, broke the toe link, and wiped out 5 or 6 cars in the middle of the back straightaway because they hit the wall by themselves.
Yep.
So, I mean, I know NASCAR is trying their damnedest to fix whatever's wrong with this car, but it always seems like we get 2 or 3 good things, and then the next thing in NASCAR, the Hail Marys is typically what they fail on. They're going for it, and here's 4th down, and instead of taking that safety, they're going for it, and it always seems to come back and bite them in the ass. So
you also mix in the factor of, with the way social media and everything has blown up over the last, I'll even go 10 years. From 2014, there are so many opinions and so many eyeballs, and then everybody's got their own mindset and everybody's got their own ideas, and they're all throwing it at NASCAR at once. So no matter what NASCAR does, it's gonna make 50% of people happy, and it's gonna make 50% of people pissed off. It's never fluctuated. It seems like in the last 10 years, it seems like half the people are happy and half of them are mad. So it's like a stalemate of where to go next with this kind of situation.
And it sucks for people like me and you and Chris that actually watch the racing. The things that we kind of nitpick about the car are things that we would like to see changed so that we can have an actual race instead of a caution-filled sporting event.
Looks like
Yep.
a slot car race. Everybody staying in line.
What I compare it to is NASCAR has almost become, and I go back to the dirt tracks again, they've almost became local dirt track promoters. Because if you think about it, they're just trying to get eyes on the sport no matter what way, shape, or fashion.
It doesn't matter, right? As long as somebody's clicking on your stuff and watching.
Yeah. We became a high-speed NFL because it's all about dollars now. It's all about views and eyes and marketing dollars and what driver brings this much money to us and media stuff, whatever. With that, they've created almost a disconnect between the people who understand the sport and the new fans they're trying to reach out to, rather than bring that understanding together. It's what I loved about Fox coverage in the early 2000s. They really went in depth in explaining to new fans to bring those new fans and make those new fans into understanding fans. For example, local dirt track. There's 90% of the fans can't tell the difference between an A mod and a B mod. They look the same, but they're drastic differences. And it's gotten to the point now, Kenny Schrader actually talked about it on TikTok the other day. A lot of tracks are cutting out the A mods, completely cutting them out because the fans don't know the difference. And the B mods are half the price to pay. So a lot of the drivers are converting their A mods to B mods, running for half as much money because they have nowhere to race, because all the tracks are cutting out A mods because fans, rather than educate the fans on the difference in the cars or how the cars operate, they're just cutting them out and says, screw it, we just want to bring in new people. It's like, okay, cool. That's like a fast food restaurant just having a really high turnover rate. It's like, yeah, we're just going to keep bringing in new people. We can bring in new ones. Eventually, you're going to run out of new ones.
Right.
You need to start taking these new ones and molding them into completing those generations instead of just constantly reaching for the next thing.
Do you think that they got caught in a mindset of, well, we're getting far enough away from some of the older generation fans that they're able to just keep reaching, and there is such a high turnover rate as far as fans go? Because I feel like you get I don't like putting labels on people or groups of people or whatever, but you have your boomer, age group that, and my old man is one of those ones that just hates everything about NASCAR, but he's still watching every week. It's like, so I'm trying to figure out if they're just complaining to complain or if they're actually unhappy, or, it's so hard to judge and dictate. In NASCAR, all of their guys are having to untangle this web too in real
Yeah.
time.
And see, I think you bring up a really good point. There's something that a lot of social media people deal with on a daily basis, and it's very simple. Misery loves company.
Right.
He's pissed off about NASCAR, and we use your dad as an example. He's pissed about NASCAR, and he watches just to see what they screw up.
Or what he can find to complain about is what it seems like.
Yes, exactly. So you have these new fans that watch like, oh, this is cool, that's great, and then they get bored and move on. So there's your turnover rate, and then you have, like you said, the boomers, will say, that look at it and they continue to watch it. It's kind of like stalking your ex's social media. You're sitting there watching it, you know you're gonna hate what you see, but you still want to see it and see if they miss you.
Right.
Same thing with him. It's like, how far away have they strayed?
Right.
How it's like he keeps watching in the hopes they do something stupid, which is what we do with our exes on social media, for example. So that's how I brought that full circle.
That's a really good analogy, because it really does seem like there are people that sit online watching and waiting for something to complain about. And you pick XYZ as you're an example, but then I see so many fans that show so much love and passion, and they love everything that's happening, and they're not complaining. And it's like, man, it's such polar opposites. And it's like, how do you get those two back together? Because like you said, misery loves company. So they're just waiting for something to complain about. Whereas I'm watching every week, and I grew up watching the 90s NASCAR and the 2000s and the teens, and now the 20s. And I love it. Like I love everything about racing. Like, and yeah, there are little things here and there that I have my opinion on, but I'm not searching for failures, and I'm not searching for negatives. And it's like, I'm just grateful we have racing right now, because it can be taken away like that.
Exactly.
We saw that in 2020.
Exactly. Like, I'm just so grateful I can turn on my TV and watch racing on the weekends.
Yep.
Yeah. See, and a lot of those people, I think I'm one of these guys. I love the sport. I love everything they're doing. I love everything NASCAR is trying to do. And I think, and it's not every week, I find myself, a couple times a season nitpicking something out of a race. And I'm like, you know what? NASCAR could have done a little better with that, or, something like that. But I always turn it back on because I love it. But I also want to see how far forward the sport's going to go. Like, I want to see the change, but not necessarily all the change is good change. And who knows, a lot of the what they just did at the All-Star race with the tire options, who knows, we may start getting that at the road courses through the Cup Series. They may decide, okay, Sonoma, Chicago, Watkins Glen, where you guys are going to have a choice between primary and softs. Which cool. I'd be totally down with that. I mean, look at that's the whole reason we have the choose cone now, was the 2020 All-Star race. And NASCAR implemented that. So, I'm like, I don't know how this is going to be, but let's see it play out. And if it's good, then great. I'm all for it. But it's like, I'm one of those fans that still has things to nitpick and have my opinion on every now and then. But I'm not going to.
I'm not trying to exempt myself. I'm guilty of nitpicking at things too, and then I'm just well, like, it is what it is. That's what they chose to do, so I move on with it.
And see with those, and I'm always curious to see what direction it takes the sport. Just because I may not care for it then, the long effect that it has on the sport, it may not seem so good in the beginning, but in the long run, it may end up falling into a hand where it makes a bunch of good of something. So,
and to tie in how talking about how NASCAR is moving together, progressing. That's one of my favorite things about my favorite team personally is 23XI. Their entire mindset is forward together. We're going to do this together. We're moving forward. Let's stop looking in the past. We're not going that direction. Let's look at the future, man. Let's do it together. And I think that was really cool that they implemented their that slogan into their team.
Well, boys, it's been right there at an hour. Chris, it's been awesome having you back on the show, bud. What's your schedule looking like? I know we said we had you for tonight. Are you back for a while?
Yeah, for now, I should be free and clear for a while. No races lined up whatsoever. So
Until
no,
Spike Motorsports calls you, right?
yeah, somebody needs to call. Jesus Christ. Right now, the only ones that have called were Elk City Motorsports Park. They wanted me to drive some of their stuff a little bit here and there.
Did you jump on it?
Huh?
Did you jump on that?
Oh yeah. It's my local dirt track here. It's just they have a race car rental program that they wanted me to promote. They have sprint cars, limited modifieds, front wheel drive 4-cylinders, tuners, and all of that. So I drove a tuner and a couple enduro races, a little hour and a half long enduros, and some tuner races over in Amarillo because we're here in Western Oklahoma. We're putting together a second limited mod right now, and little stuff here and there, just working with them to do a little bit of dirt stuff here until I can get my motor rebuilt to drive my own stuff and line my own pockets.
There you go.
Well, Chris, we're going to be trying to still continue to help you like we did with Colton. Try to get you out there, hopefully get you in some good equipment.
Man, you just never know what eyes and what ears are going to fall on any random podcast on any given day, you know? So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like no matter what the budget or the equipment or anything else is, I'll tell everybody right now I'm loyal to Alex. I've had offers from other teams for less cost or even more cost with better equipment, and I'm going to stick with Alex because he's me. Just he did life better than I did. So he's got his own stuff, and we're putting a plan together to where I can purchase my own car and run under his banner, similar to what Rita Goulette did with Wayne Peterson. Purchase my own car, run one of their numbers, and be a part of their team still. So that's what we're working on right now.
All right, nice. Well, Don, it's been awesome to get to talk to you, buddy. Chris, like I said, it's been awesome having you back. Look forward to speaking with you and having you back on the show. What are we on tomorrow night too, Don?
We got tomorrow, and then we'll do Fridays. Going to be the hub
race
for
hub.
Charlotte and Indy 500 and Monaco.
We got a busy weekend because we have Trucks, Xfinity, Cup, F1, and Indy.
Yep.
So busy weekend. But all right, boys, it's been awesome. This is Motor Racing Podcast, guys. Night.
Y'all be safe.